Hello, everyone. I'd like to talk about today about Foresight for science, technology, and innovation. This is actually a kind of our recent add-on onto the Foresight methodology. So, as we practice Foresight, as we learn from our experience, and as we are faced with different challenges and different problems, different issues, we are developing the Foresight practice and aiming to add on some additional concepts, additional tools, methods, and other ideas where we can actually respond better to our current challenges. So I'd like to first of all lay ground on what we mean by Foresight for science, technology, and innovation, or ForSTI, as we say now. It is a medium to long-term future-oriented analysis, and the future is considered here as multiple. So we are talking about some alternative futures. And we look at the issues beyond the purely technical or technological ones to cover a wide array of issues, to cover societal, economic, environmental, and all sorts of different issues where foresight actually can be applied. It is mainly informed by a participative process, and this participative process helps to assess evidence, articulate some future possibilities, and propose some actions. There are a number of stakeholders engaged in the process to help, because the stakeholder engagement is an essential part of the foresight process. It's not an isolated activity, it is an interactive activity where we bring together all different parties with a wide spectrum of experience and knowledge, as well as authority to do things, to implement things, and to start some actions. And foresight is not only thinking about the future, and Forst in this case, it is designed to feed into our STI decision-making at present time, because we think that actually we need to start from today in order to achieve some impactful changes in the future. And therefore, it aims to mobilize actors to effect change. And effective change, actually, and effective action is about getting these key actors together and then trying some kind of to build some synergy and concerted actions between them. So this is a slide which is built on Luke Georgiou's earlier work. Actually, this showing how foresight is practiced from technological forecasting to technology foresight, innovation foresight, and to the systemic foresight. This is happening for a reason. It is happening in the way that the world is changing. So we are facing more complexities, more interactions between different systems, and there are greater uncertainties. So we would like to address all this with the proper solutions to these problems. And what the point we have reached, actually, that we need systems thinking in foresight. So foresight is moved towards to adopt systemic perspectives, to be orientated towards grand challenges to address them, and then look at the globalization issues as well as localization issues, and to bring kind of a synergy between all this, because they are very much interdependent and interlinked. So the focus is on innovation systems and networks rather than a narrow scope of science. And we are looking at the innovation policy. This is not a kind of a science policy or technology policy only, but it's a kind of a systemic innovation policy which again brings the big picture on the agenda and look at how different actors can create some sort of synergies to make things happen. Because we know that the issue is not only technological, it is not only scientific, or it's not only about innovation. It has a lot of different aspects also, environmental, economic, political aspects. So we try to look at all this as a system. And that is what brings the systemic foresight idea on the table. And then while doing this, we also looked actually how foresight practice is evolving. So foresight practice is evolving not itself. It is evolving for a reason, because the world is changing, our problems and challenges are changing, so we are adapting and improving our practice in that line. There are also a number of technologies giving us new opportunities. For example, information and communication technologies. I will tell later about the big data technologies, virtual reality technologies. There are a number of technologies, there are a number of new methods. You can see it clearly from this trend where we used 1 or 2 methods in the 90s, but when we came to 2014, 15, and the current practice, we see that there are over 30 methods used in Foresight for various purposes, and they are integrated in many different ways to respond to many different challenges and problems. The picture actually shows that we are using all these methods in a kind of a more integrated way. If you look at the earlier practice, there are some independent islands of independent methods. They were either, for example, using some surveys, Delphi methods, or scenarios. But at the point we come, we see that actually there are multiple methods integrated with each other and creating some bigger islands of methods. And these are quantitative and qualitative or semi-quantitative in nature. Again, this is not for the sake of using multiple methods. This is actually to respond to our needs and our challenges we face. As they become more complex, we develop some more sophisticated methodologies and approaches to respond to them. And this is showing some different sides of application of Foresight. So it is not only about, again, for a narrow scope of science. You see that there's business and economics, public administration, engineering, operations research, environmental sciences, and energy and fuel, material science. These are all actually somewhere located in the picture, and they are all using various methods of Foresight to plan their future, to develop some long-term visions, long-term outlooks, and then prioritize actions, and then develop some policies for them. And the number of countries are using these tools. So this number is continuously growing, and there are quite a few countries doing Foresight exercises in more than one iteration. So this is looking at last 25 years data and showing actually how things are evolving across time. So the question is where we are now. So we are facing a number of global trends at the moment. What is happening with the world? Growing up global demand for products and services. So especially in developing countries, there's a great hunger for new products and services. So we see an increasing speed in the number and variety of products and services being delivered. But at the same time, getting scarce. Our resources like water, food, energy, and natural resources are getting scarce. And they are getting more expensive, although they are our kind of commodities and basic kind of human needs, but they are all at the same time finite and they are shared. So that's why they are becoming more and more important and more expensive, like water, for example. And that gives rise to sustainability and security concerns and problems with social, economic, and political conflicts, inequalities, and which we observe actually at the moment as we speak today. So there are really great problems and challenges, and there are still wars going on in the world because of the scarce resources we have, and then some political considerations. But at the same time, we have a number of opportunities. We are going technological. There are a number of advancements in science, technology, innovation, and there's an increasing public and private R&D. So there's a great appreciation of science, technology, innovation at all levels in the world. So there's a recognition of the importance of it, which actually help us to get some opportunities to address those challenges. At the same time, while all these things are happening, we are facing with a growing complexity. So you can see that there are a number of issues. There are sociocultural evolution and transformations. There are corporate, industrial, and research activities, and there are government interests. So there are a number of things, starting from sustainability, quality of life issues, generation of wealth, but at the same time we have all sorts of corporate considerations in terms of financial markets, foreign direct investments, corporate objectives, and then how this respond to each other, for example, like corporate social responsibility, and the role of governments in that, the government's objectives, international agreements, international developments like all sorts of conflicts and terrorism, for example. So we are actually operating and sustaining our lives in such a complex environment, and it's kind of a first step of developing a new approach, a new methodology for foresight to appreciate this kind of complexity and to identify all those developments and where we are operating it. And we are also setting some ambitious goals to respond to those changes. This is a set of goals suggested by the United Nations and agreed by all the members, obviously. There are 17 of them. As you see, they sound very good. No poverty, zero hunger, good wealth and well-being. Probably each of us would agree on this. But at the same time, they are very hard to achieve. We cannot even achieve this at the neighborhood level, actually, in our settlements. So setting this as a kind of a global target, global vision, you can see how ambitious it could be to achieve and how big the problem is. So we need to see this big picture and how these things are interrelated and interconnected while thinking about their future. So all these things, actually, that I mentioned give us a message that we have a complex system which gives rise to uncertainty, and they require a holistic view. So we should always keep in mind this big picture. And all these things, again, issues are systemically interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. They require some customized targets, coordinated strategies, and policies for intervention, commitment, and to create impact. And at the same time, there are plenty of unknown unknowns. So we don't even know, actually, what may happen on the way. There are plenty of surprises, there are plenty of shocks, and wildcards as we go through the planning and implementation process. So all this call for a systemic view of issues, actors, and processes. So regarding issues, we face a number of challenges. And these are kind of the demand dynamics. So there are all sorts of problems we are talking about, like water, energy, health, climate change, education, urban and rural dynamics, which are, again, interrelated and interconnected. And we have some instruments to address these challenges at the same time, like some advancements in science, technology, and innovation. These are taken from the priorities of our Russia 2030 project, which are probably common for many countries in the world. So some of the technological and scientific instruments we use to address these problems, like information and communication technologies, which will give us plenty of opportunities probably to address those challenges. Biotechnologies, medicine and healthcare developments, new materials and nanotechnologies, environmental technologies, transport and space systems, and energy efficiency and energy saving. These are some of the instruments, not all, we can use to address these challenges. As you see, for example, when we think about the energy is not only a local problem. It needs to be considered in a cascaded way at the multiple level, starting from the global level, which begins with the fossil fuel extraction, for example, in the industry and at the global and national levels. Then how this is converted into some sort of energy that we can make use of later. And then how this actually can be brought into our settlements for our use. So there are multiple levels, and our actually strategies and our planning for the future of such technology should look at this kind of global, national, local, and settlement levels in a kind of again, multi-level approach. So this is the kind of a systemic view of the issue. We need to look at the systemic view of actors also. Actors are not anymore those actors we can find in traditional triple helix. So it's not only government, universities, and industry. There are much more and many more actually actors to consider and to deal with. There are large and small, medium-sized firms, suppliers, distributors, and complementary products producers, and related to them, the rest of the value chain, as you can see, like components, machinery, and specialized industries. There are services which provide necessary skills and education to the system, like training, knowledge transfer, research and technical skills, managerial and service support, and there are governmental and regulatory bodies, and at the same time there are research centers, higher education institutions, public research institutions, technology transfer office, and an important actor again, banks and finance, because all these ideas need to be financed, so economic models need to be developed. And trade associations certainly have a role to play in this. So we need to have this systemic view when we come to think about the actors within the system and engage them throughout the process. And we need their coordinated actions. We need some strategic alignments between them so that they can create this sort of synergies. We need complementarity between them so that we can build some value creation, value chains. And this is not only for industrial value chains, this is also for service value chains, and then to create all sorts of technological and social innovations. And we also need networking between them for socialization, articulation, and combination and internationalization to make use of this kind of tacit and explicit knowledge and to bring them together. So there's a role for everyone when it comes to the actors in the system. And our ForSTI actually system, or ForSTI system, is established on this kind of a background. So it is first of all a participative process, brings together all these different actors with the enlargement of the knowledge base, engagement of them, and then mobilizing them. And at the same time, it looks ahead, further ahead, to give us some time to plan for things, to give us some time to act in the future. So it is prospective in nature. And also, it is orientated towards policy making in terms of planning, prioritization, and creating some partnerships between all these different authorities and all these different actors. So these are the kind of key functions of ForSTI. And there's a systemic process. So we are dealing with some systemic problems. So we develop some systemic processes and systemic solutions for that. So the methodology proposed here consists of 7+1 I's. So begins with an initiation of the activity, establishing the purpose of the activity and its scope and users, and then beginning to engage them. And then some intelligence gathering about the future, scanning environments, and looking at the trends, drivers of change, wildcards, weak signals, and all the other factors. There's a great deal of imagination involved in it, because imagination is the beginning of everything. So we are doing innovation. So there's a great space for design, creativity, and innovation in the process. So that is captured by the imagination phase of the activity. Then we capture this in some future scenarios and models and see how this could be giving us some opportunities for the future, different landscapes, different scenarios for the future, and where we can find, where we would like to actually find ourselves in the future in the form of a vision. So what is kind of our vision for the future, which is captured in the integration phase, where we build some targets for the future, and then we develop some strategies. So this vision is translated into some sort of a strategy at this kind of interpretation phase. That is really a translation. So what does that vision mean for us? So that is kind of the main question. And the answer of that question is our main strategy and main roadmap, if you like. And this connects the future into the present in this way. So we develop some actions to intervene into systems, to begin the change activity, because change needs to happen from right now in order to achieve things in the longer term future, because actually nothing happens in one day or in a few months or a year. So things take time to do research and development, to develop some new technologies, new products, to create some new markets, and then to develop some standards, regulations, and all other kind of supporting infrastructure, technical skills, and so on. So if you think about all these activities, you will see that it will take time, and the future is not too far, obviously. So we need to act really from today in order to create some impact in the future. And then we do the assessment of this impact at the end of the activity. So we'll look at actually whether we have done as something useful or it can be improved in the next round around. And the activity is interactive with the engagement of stakeholders. And we have quite a few number of methods we can use for this process. So this is our ForSTI, and it explains actually Foresight processes and frequently used methods for each of these phases. So to make your lives a little bit easier with this picture, so I divided it into several pieces. So the first one, for example, showing the ForSTI processes, what kind of processes we are engaged in these activities. It looks like galaxy, actually, it's full of stars. So if you look at this picture in the night, it will look good, probably. And it has also a set of quantitative methods and qualitative methods. So you can see that actually there are a number of methods. And this is not an exhaustive list. So you can be very creative in a Foresight exercise with your own methods also. But we can see that there are greater opportunities now to use some quantitative methods and to bring together, integrate them with qualitative methods. Remember the first picture I showed where we started integrating multiple methods with each other to address these problems. So for the future, we are also talking about actually where we are now and how things will look like in the future. So we see a greater use of big data for collective intelligence in Foresight, because we see that there are a higher number of publications. Every day, thousands of publications are coming, and these are scientific publications, some newspapers, articles, some journals. There are conferences like this where new information and knowledge are shared between participants, and all this data are shared. So humanistically, it is not possible actually to stay up to date with all this information and knowledge flow. So that is why we are using now big data to bring together some collective intelligence from this wide pool of knowledge coming from very different sources in the world. And there are possibilities to use, for example, virtual reality for future experience. So we can actually play with our scenarios. So they will be much easily communicated once we can actually put them in front of people and show them the future picture. And there are intelligent systems to support our decision-making under complexity and uncertainty. And I'm glad to see that actually, to say that in our institute here, we have begun with the use of big data analytics for Foresight and for ForSTI. And my colleagues, so I won't go into details of that, but we have taken kind of a first step in this new development and new tool and how we can exploit it. And the rest hopefully will follow up soon. So my time is over now, and I just would like to say that all these ideas actually are captured in our new book, which is also here. It is Foresight for Science, Technology, Innovation for STI. So I tried to present things in about 20 minutes, but you can take some hours and days, actually, and then read it again and again, and to kind of grasp all these ideas and give more thought on it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ozcan.